All right, guys, welcome back to Wreck and Rule. We are joined today by Drew Nolosco, the brand manager for the Transformers trading card game by Wizards of the Coast.
Hey, everybody.
Drew, it's a pleasure to be able to talk Transformers with you.
I am super happy to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
We're thankful to have you here. To kind of break the ice a little bit, what has been your favorite Transformers storyline, whether it's a TV show, comic book series, video game?
So can I give you a two-part answer?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the character design in Hearts of Iron is insane. The Shockwave as a Civil War era monitor just blew my mind when I first saw that. I love that character design. In terms of storyline, all right, this is a three-part
Go
answer?
for it. Absolutely.
Okay, in terms of storyline, the original movie, I was a youngster, and the death of Prime was like traumatic.
It often is, yeah.
But then the concept that the Prime was a transferable thing, that there would always be a Prime, and that there would always be the Autobot ethic would always be captured and held by someone, and that person would rise to that occasion. Like, I thought the brilliance of having Hot Rod become the leader was just amazing to me, and like even as a kid, because you can tell when he's a kid, he just is like,
Right, and if you don't mind a follow-up to that.
Yeah, okay.
How did you feel when they brought Prime back later in Season 3?
Super relieved.
Okay.
Like, absolutely relieved. There's really no other way than to describe just this sort of like relief that washed over young me. Because like, as a kid, you love Prime. Like, as an adult, you still love Prime, but as a kid, like, you love Prime.
He's that father figure.
He's the father figure, right? So in terms of modern era storytelling, I am a super big fan of Lost Light.
Okay, awesome. Me too. If you don't, without giving spoilers, have you read the ending to the series yet?
I have not.
Okay.
I am really waiting to. I'm really hoping that over the holiday break I can catch up on my reading. But yes, I do desperately want to know how that ends.
It's definitely worth it, and I'm sad to see it go, but James Roberts does a great job with his ending.
Yes, the series is fantastically written. It's fantastically illustrated. That whole creative team has done wonderful things.
And it's been really cool to see the art show up in the game as well, in the battle cards.
We're such a big fan of the IDW Transformers style. It was really a no-brainer for us when we went and worked with Hasbro, so that the Hasbro publishing team could gain us access to that. It's been really rewarding.
Cool. And so question number 2 is, right now, in general, we're living in a golden age of Transformers.
We sure are.
And especially with the toys. And we've seen, over the past maybe 10, 15 years, they've done a lot of updated and upgraded versions of the classic characters. Are there any characters that they've not done a new toy for that you would like to see them make?
So this is probably a first time that you're hearing this. One of the cool things about being Hasbro is we have the ability to work with Hasbro to do things like that.
Okay.
So there will be, in 2019, there will be some characters that have not really been touched from a creative point of view in a long time.
Wow.
It's not in the Wave 2 set, but later in 2019, we get to bring characters into the modern generation's look.
Okay.
And so yes, there are.
Awesome. That is a great little preview. We're looking forward to seeing what you guys do with that. Sorry, go ahead.
You and your fans, and I know you. This is one of the most constantly talked about topics amongst the fan groups. But of the characters who have not had representation recently, who would you want to see
in the game itself, or
in the game?
So this is going to be kind of.
I can only control the the game. I can make suggestions to John Ward and the folks back at Hasbro and Chris Nadeau, but let's just keep to the trading card game.
That makes sense. So for me personally, this might be kind of an oddball answer. I would love to see the Sharkticons. I've always loved their design. They look really goofy. To see them as like a swarm type of character would be kind of neat.
So can we dive into that?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so right now, every single Transformers character is a unique entity, and we haven't brought any of the Transformers characters, at least into Wave 1, who represent something that would be more like a soldier or drone. The Sharkticons definitely fall into that category. Would you prefer to see Sharkticon and have it be like a mid-tier character, or would you prefer to see the Sharkticons and you get to play like, what if the Sharkticons said you may play any number of Sharkticons and they cost like 6 points each?
Ooh, that second option sounds like it would have some intriguing gameplay possibilities.
Like the cargo trailer of character cards.
Ooh, yes, I like that idea quite a bit.
Okay, this is just to be clear, I'm just speculating.
It's a hypothetical.
This one is really hypothetical.
It'd be kind of neat to see a similar concept with maybe Wreck-Gar and the Junkions maybe existing in a certain type of way.
Although it's interesting because Wreck-Gar clearly has an individual personality
right.
and a unique spark as opposed to sort of the shared spark amongst or even maybe non-spark.
Yeah, they're almost more animalistic.
Right, yeah, it's kind of unclear for some of the, the Insecticons also have drone versions of themselves, and while there are named versions who are unique and have their own spark, that's another place where that concept might be interesting.
Yeah, that would definitely be cool. All right.
Sorry,
Oh, no.
That was back to your original answer, which was you'd love to see sort of the Sharkticons updated and brought in. Cool. All right, follow-up question.
Sure.
So, the Sharkticon as a toy was originally released as a Decepticon.
As Null.
And that's debatable. Like, it was clear back in G1 that they weren't going to be adding in multiple factions aside from Autobot and Decepticon. Would you prefer to see Decepticon, Sharkticon, or do you want us to push out into that like crazy weirdo third faction?
Ooh. So maybe get some Quintessons in there. That would be really cool. The third faction would be really intriguing to see.
Well, I don't just mean limiting it to a third faction, but do you want us to start seeing faction proliferation? Like, is it better for you to have, like, from a player's point of view and a fan's point of view, to have that be represented as the Decepticon, or Wreck-Gar as an Autobot?
Okay.
Or is it cooler for you for it to really pull into that like Junkion world?
So I'd have to say, kind of as someone who's been a huge fan since I've been 3 years old, I would love to see you guys go really deep into those more eclectic, more specific factions and personalities.
Interesting. This is market research, people. This is. I just want to be really clear. I am really getting the temperature of really strong fans of the product.
We're happy to talk Transformers as long as you want.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I could go on for days.
Absolutely. So one more quick icebreaker. Like everybody.
These were icebreakers?
Oh, I'm sorry. I promise we'll get to the actual game soon on my end.
Okay.
So, last icebreaker is just so if you had the ability to create your own custom character, what would you want their alt mode to be?
Oh, interesting. That's a question I've never been asked before. I'm going to have to temporarily pause and put that on the background processing.
Absolutely. Sure.
Ask me that question again towards the end of it, because that is a super interesting question.
All right, we'll definitely come back to it then. All right, so
I thought you were going to ask me something slightly different, and what I really want is a Decepticon medic.
Ooh, you're right. I think maybe closest they've ever had was maybe Hook from the Constructicons.
Yep.
That would be interesting.
Yep. Huh. And I've been thinking about what does a Decepticon medic mean? Is it sort of like the mad scientist?
Ooh.
Like I don't know what that would be, but that's something I've been looking for.
That would be cool to see. Absolutely. So now just to push to the actual game itself.
Got it.
So As the brand manager of the game itself, I'm sure that you have a ton of games under your belt.
Yes.
What has been your favorite team of characters to play as so far?
Well, I mean, I have my tank deck in front of me, so I'm going to hold this up.
Sure.
So this is the Dark Mount Demolisher Megatron tank deck. And this is by far my favorite deck in Transformers.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I am a super big fan of this deck. I'm a super big fan of this playstyle, which is... so when I play Magic, I'm a Dimir player, which is the sort of blue-black control the board state. And I've always played that playstyle in all the games that I play. And this deck feels like that to me by just basically sitting there, and it's not controlling the board state except the fact that I can tank damage better than you can dish it out, and then I get to convert and do my thing.
Okay.
So
that's awesome. Follow-up question to that. I think it was on the second podcast you did with Evangelist.
Yep. Who's not here, unfortunately.
Come down from Canada sometime. We'll be happy to host you.
Hi, Evangelist.
You mentioned that you haven't seen anybody in the community crack what you guys think is the strongest tank deck.
Which is the one that's in my hands.
Interesting. We may have to get a game against you at some point.
Here's the thing.
Okay.
There's a distinct lack of orange pips in this deck.
This is true. Okay. All right. Interesting. We'll see if we can get a game in at some point later.
Okay.
So to kind of go from here, maybe following up off of that, you're active and so are the other WotC members in the Facebook group for the card game.
Yep.
Have you found any surprises when it comes to how the fans have reacted to certain characters, maybe how strong they think certain archetypes are versus maybe other archetypes not quite as strong right now?
So it's super interesting watching the fans discover a developing metagame. I think that the specific answer to your question is the reaction to the fans have had with Metroplex and Metroplex, and very specifically the Metroplex versus Insecticon interaction, which has been absolutely wonderful to watch. There's a super key moment in that matchup where Barrage gets KO'd in 2 turns.
Okay.
Where it frequently takes Barrage 3 turns to get KO'd, and that changes how that deck ends up getting to play, because they end up losing one whole cycle of converting and getting into that mode where they can just start overkilling. So that is my specific answer.
That's good.
But my general answer is, and the community has been super amazing. Like you guys have developed an awesome community in the Facebook group. Others have developed great communities, and just watching this develop and flourish has been super fulfilling for everybody back at Wizards.
That's great to hear. So, since you mentioned Metroplex, almost like we planned this out here.
We didn't. We really didn't.
Drew did not want to see any questions before we started here. So, Metroplex has been a huge hit with the community. How far into the development of the product line itself did you guys decide that you wanted to do Metroplex and do him as an early release in the system?
So very early. So we very early in the design of the game system and what the components would look like, we almost immediately knew 2-sided cards to represent the true nature of a Transformers character. And then we went through this process. There were like 17 or so game systems that we ended up working on that were wildly divergent. Like
interesting.
Crazy different systems. But we pretty rapidly, this is a circuitous answer, sorry.
No, absolutely.
We pretty rapidly realized that we didn't want to have these represented in any way in the battle card deck. There was no it wasn't going to be like these started out of play and then you had to get them in play somehow. We wanted these to be elements in the game that were fully embracing the representation of a Transformer character. So that meant they started in play. And then once that decision process had fallen out, then we really got going. They became gigantic cards. And then from there, we realized that we wanted to play with the idea and all the possibilities incumbent in not having to shuffle characters into a deck, which then led to, well, let's just make the Titans gigantic. So that was a very early part of the process.
That's awesome.
And we're not done with that.
Okay.
Like, the idea that you don't have to shuffle a card object into your deck means that you can do the things that other game systems aren't able to do with cards. Size is one of them.
Okay.
We are definitely varying card size. You see that here. You see that in the Titan size card. We're not done with it yet. But there's other things. There's other printing technologies that Wizards has come up with over the 25 years of making trading card games. Some of it is stuff that we've used in our Duel Masters game in Japan. Some of it is stuff that's never seen the light of day. And all of that is on the table in the light of you never have to shuffle.
Okay, interesting. We're definitely pumped up to see what you guys come up with. That's awesome. We only have 3 more questions, I promise.
Okay.
So the first releases for the game are very Autobot focused. If you look at the booster packs, they feature Autobot characters. Metroplex obviously also an Autobot. Was that intentional? And is there a possibility we might see more of a Decepticon, more Decepticon imagery in future waves?
The Wave 2 key art features a Decepticon character.
Ah, okay. Awesome.
Yes, it was. We're building a business, right? And Prime and Bumblebee and Grimlock are amongst the 3 most recognizable characters inside the Transformers IP. And it was important for us to put these characters on the front of the package and have them be the key art for the first wave of product, because it's a signal to fans. And it's a signal that their favorite characters are absolutely going to show up here. And it was part of the, we're going to launch a brand and make it successful. And we hear the fans who are like, where are my Decepticons? Guys, I'm playing my favorite deck, which contains Decepticons. It is okay. All right. So we recently had this thing where we were just polling randomly. It's like favorite character on the Transformers team. By the way, it's Soundwave, pretty much ubiquitously.
Yep.
And we love Decepticons individually, well, most of them, and as a group, and you will definitely see more of them.
Awesome. Yeah, we're looking forward to that, especially Soundwave. We're looking forward to seeing what you guys do with him.
Yep. There are multiple Soundwaves in 2019.
Ooh!
Towards the back half.
Okay, that's awesome. We're definitely looking forward to that. That's cool. So 2 more questions. When we look at the first wave of characters that you guys did, we have a lot of staples, like you mentioned. You have Prime, you have Bumblebee, Grimlock, Megatron, Starscream, but you also have some very, very eclectic characters. We have Demolisher, we have
I think my favorite,
Deadlock.
Yep. I think my favorite example of that is Flame War. Sorry, down where you can't see, I have infinite Transformers products.
I'm a little bit jealous.
So I just magically made Flame War appear out of nowhere. Yeah, so Flame War I think is also a good example of that, and there's a reason why she is common.
Okay.
We wanted to show in a fan's early experience with the game that characters who were more obscure are going to be an integral part of the Transformers trading card game. She's had, I believe, 1 toy. I think there's just 1 Flame War toy. And she's been in some of the storylines, but she's not a major character. And it was very intentional that we went and picked her. And Demolisher. There's a few others, but those 2 are basically the 2 most obscure characters in Wave 1. Because it was a signaling effort. We wanted to signal to hardcore Transformers fans that this was going to plumb the depths of Transformers as an IP, and we weren't just going to be doing the 6 most popular characters
Right.
over and over and over again. It's also really intentional, by the way, that Optimus Prime and Megatron and Bumblebee and Starscream all have common versions. We want the experience for someone who doesn't buy a case of Transformers to be such that they can see and feel and play with characters that they love. And for a lot of people, particularly youngsters, and there's a big youngster component to this game, those are 4 of the characters that they recognize and love the most. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, we were definitely pumped up to see the obscure characters, and
Which is not going to stop.
awesome. Yeah, we're looking forward to it. And then we have just one last question.
Okay.
So, anytime that you guys post anything from the official Transformers page, there's always comments about organized play.
Yes.
What can we as a community do to help to, 1, promote the game, and then 2, also to maybe make that a reality in the future?
So, the first thing I'd say there is every store can choose, and this is intentional, can choose what works best for their local game store. And for some communities that have youngsters or parents and youngsters playing, that's probably going to be something like League or the 2-pack sealed.
Which is a lot of fun.
It's super fun.
We love it. I pulled Nemesis on the first one.
You
that we
lucky
did.
dog. My luck is not like that. But I mean, that's why you balance out the damage, right?
Right. Yep.
Although Nemesis kind of runs perpendicular to even that balancing act.
A little bit. So I was playing Joe. Joe had Bombshell, and Joe had another common character, and there was only 1 point of damage difference, but
Okay.
it still worked out fairly close.
So it's interesting because the other thing that's super interesting is if you open up a 4 defense character in 2-pack sealed, that is a super huge bit. Because 2-pack sealed, it's a little bit more difficult to stack lots of attack damage on. So 4 defense characters go a long way in 2-pack sealed. Anyway, stores get to choose. So this is not my first rodeo when it comes to establishing a card game that has has a strong IP or has a large kid component, and Transformers has the potential for both. And so it's not correct I don't believe it's correct for us to dictate a one-size-fits-all situation early in the project's life cycle. So the other thing that's important when it comes to OP community participation is Transformers we anticipated, and that has come true, has brought a lot of people in who have never played trading card games before. Specifically, a lot of Transformers fans, and prize-driven OP has this weird effect of the prizes don't always go to the people who love the brand the most.
Right.
And so early in the life cycle, we want to make sure that everybody who comes in can find a community that works, that fits, and not have it be an air of it's too competitive for me.
Right.
And so that's why we're not doing this right now. That's not to say we won't be doing it. And in fact, there are events downstairs over the course of this weekend that I think I might see you playing in.
Most definitely.
So you might see things as we build the brand that are a little bit more convention driven. And then we're going to consistently reevaluate what is best for building this as a long-term brand and building up a community of players and building up a community of stores and locations where people of varying different game ability can come and play Transformers and enjoy Transformers. And in the future, that might involve tournaments at local game stores. But it's not going to in the immediate future.
That makes sense.
To the second part of your question, which is, I think, equally important to your first part, which is, what can you as highly involved fans do? I would say the first thing is make your desire known to your local game store. A lot of that desire feeds up through game stores to Wizards, as well as fans directly to Wizards. But the organized part of organized play is organized through local game stores. And when we see that demand coming from local game stores, that's something we listen to. But we also know we need to balance that with how do we build community first and then tournaments as a follow-on to that.
That makes a lot of sense. Like Joe and I and Frenchie, when we play, we don't bring out the really strong Insecticon deck against a brand new player.
But you can here today.
That is true. That is true. So, Drew, I think that's everything that we had here. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Oh, yeah. Do you guys have time?
We have all the time in the world.
Great. Let's start. Now it's my turn to ask questions.
Sure.
Okay. So, icebreaker question.
Sure.
Favorite character that we haven't done yet?
So, I mean, for me, it definitely has to be Springer, without a doubt. The entire Wrecker saga from IDW, fantastic.
Okay. So, you really want to see a triple changer in the game?
Yes.
Okay, just for you. No. Yeah, the triple changers are an important part of the Transformers IP, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we're looking forward to that.
Yep. Okay, cool. So, let's talk about the metagame in your area. You mentioned the really powerful Insecticon deck. What is specifically in your local metagame working?
So, it's kind of evolved, right? So it began with very, very heavy orange decks. So Dinobots were doing great.
Yep.
3-wide card is usually going to be Wheeljack, super rare Bumblebee, Prowl,
Yep.
And then Insecticons as well. So we've seen an adaptation recently where people are running very, very heavy blue. So we've been seeing kind of like Nemesis and then the rare Prime paired up together. And it's kind of hard to chip away through that defense as a reaction.
Fan this deck if I can. Speaking of heavy blue, other way. This deck is heavy, heavy.
A lot of blue.
Heavy blue. Okay, so has the introduction of a 4-star car in Scamper and a 4-star tank done anything in the metagame specific? Probably most likely for card decks in your area?
So we haven't had a lot of major events since Metroplex has come out. And when we did do that, we did kind of an event where you built a deck that you played against somebody else's Metroplex and then you flipped it there. Joe and I did a couple trial games where Joe was running Rare Prime and Nemesis, and I did Scamper, Starter Bumblebee, Prowl, and Wheeljack.
Okay.
And we found that actually did have some very interesting plays against the heavy blue.
Yeah, it's a very interesting shakeup when you suddenly have an extra car, like particularly for like Prowl's ability.
Absolutely.
That is something that we are really happy the way that has played out. It was really good that we had that design space inside of the Metroplex deck. And that is something you'll see a little bit more of in Wave 2.
Awesome.
Not necessarily 4-star characters, but more options for existing alt mode based teams.
Okay, yeah, it's going to be awesome. Very conspicuously, motorcycles and spaceships don't have any tribe-specific cards in Wave 1.
They don't. And motorcycles and spaceships are something that we're going to be developing over time, but we're going to keep it. But we kept it focused on, like, there's just too much to. We didn't want there to be too much to do, right? Like, there's a point where the system just gets so complex, particularly in a game's first set. So tanks, planes, trucks, and cars provide signaling to players about how they can approach deck building. Dinobots and Insecticons are even stronger signaling.
Right.
But we're not going to not have someone's alt mode be their alt mode. When there are helicopter characters, they're going to be helicopter.
Awesome.
Whether or not that becomes a main deck building focus and is supported with significant amounts of cards, the way we've done that for the others, that's something that we're going to let evolve over time.
Okay.
So maybe by the end of 2019, there will be cards that let you play a motorcycle deck.
Okay.
but we also need some more motorcycles for that to happen.
That makes sense. Awesome.
Okay. What has been the most rewarding part about running a fan community for you?
So I mean, we literally thought it would just be Joe and I and Frenchie making videos. We'd have 5 subscribers that were our friends. It's pretty amazing. Something that personally for me is that it has tightened my gameplay up quite a bit, because if you make a mistake, you're suddenly broadcasting that to
and there's
the
like
entire
30
world.
people. Like, yes, but that is super true. Playing with lots of people able to watch and critique your gameplay can be very stressful. There's no doubt about it. But it is also a way, especially if you're recording it, you can go back and be like, oh.
Yes. Why did I make that move? I should have done this.
You know what the worst part is? The worst part is, like, when you realize that 2 turns later. And you're like,
So personally for me, I tend to get this idea in my head of what I really want to do, and then the game state changes. You
Yeah.
draw a new card.
Yeah.
And you're so hung up on that one cool thing that you wanted to do that you forget that you just got a brand new option that would be much better.
So, I will say that I think that it depends what your personal goal about playing that game is. Like, if your goal is to do that thing, then doing that thing is probably more important than winning. Like, if you really just want to get, like, I don't know, 3 cargo trailers on Prime,
Right.
like, okay, that's actually pretty powerful. But that may not be the winning strategy inside the situation, but you've gotten to do it, you got to point at it and say, look, I did it. It's almost like unlocking an achievement.
Absolutely. And I mean, for me personally, I want to play something that's very janky. I have like a rare Megatron and then Kickback and Shrapnel deck together, and if the pieces fire correctly, it works really, really well.
Sure, if.
Exactly.
And that's one of the fun things about this. And that's actually one of the reasons why it's one of the 2 reasons why we didn't force you to play all Decepticons or all Autobots, is because there are so many weirdo combinations in the storylines all over the place I'm going to say a thing, I'm going to whisper a thing to you, and if you've talked about it with your crew,
Okay.
then I can say it publicly.
Absolutely.
Like the ending of the Machinist series, where Optimus Prime, picks up Megatron and blasts everybody. Have you talked
Yes.
about that?
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely.
Okay. So like the scene at the end, very end of the Machinist series, where Optimus Prime wields Megatron because Starscream turns out to be is the real enemy there, and they're like, all right, we have to work together. Like, clearly we want people to be able to do stuff like that. And also it allows you to do this janky what if you will.
And even going back to the G1 cartoon, like G1 cartoon, Prime and Megatron occasionally had to team up to prevent destruction of either each other or Cybertron or what it might be.
Yep. Because ultimately, and I think that's the interesting thing about Megatron, ultimately, when it boils right down to it, Megatron does love Cybertron. It's just a vision of Cybertron that's radically different than what most sane, sentient creatures would want Cybertron to be. But,
And just to get really geeky and gush out more, what IDW does with him, where he begins as a pacifist and then becomes radicalized, and then from there starts the Decepticons.
That was amazing. And I think we see that some of that in a number of other lines where that sort of yes, the Decepticons at their most base level are evil, but I say this holding again Decepticon deck. But it's really just a different vision of Cybertron's future.
Absolutely.
That involves tyranny, but tyranny as the way to save Cybertron from the many ills. I mean, ultimately that's wrong.
Right.
But it is an interesting way to have characters grow and develop. Okay, I have an answer to your earlier question.
About the alt mode.
About the alt mode. Okay, so one of the things that Transformers doesn't do a ton with alt modes is ships.
Okay.
So there's a very specific style of ship called a swath hull.
Okay.
It's a single waterplane area twin hull. And it basically is a platform that has 2 or 4 legs sticking down like this. And then below the waterline here, there are hulls like that.
Okay, yes.
And I've always thought that would really make an interesting Transformers character body, because you have all of those possibility for appendages, for limbs buried in the hulls. You've got legs and arms basically right there for you. And when I was a kid, I did some questionable things with my Transformers. More than once, they were sent airborne. I also used to play with model rockets. And a number were submerged for extended periods of time.
If you
have done this too. I'm looking at you people out there. And I always wanted a Transformers character, a toy that floated.
Okay.
And I think there's been one or two that float.
I remember taking Sea Spray, the original G1 toy, into the bathtub.
Yes,
it may have floated.
I have a very rusted Sea Spray. The joint that allows Sea Spray's props to rotate back to be his head. I believe that had screws, and yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, are there any casualties from the bottle rocket or the model rocket experiences that stick out to you as you're kicking yourself a little bit now?
I said this to Vangelis. I've never had a Cosmos, but if I had a Cosmos as a kid, that Cosmos would have been. But yes, some of the mini vehicles were definitely casualties of war as they explored near Earth orbit.
That makes sense.
I could never make a big enough model rocket to get like what we would now call a Deluxe or Voyager class figure.
Okay.
They suffered different ills. The only two original Transformers that I have left from when I was really like a kid, I have my Devastator, who was missing a couple of his accessories, and I just said this to someone earlier today. They were like, "Why don't you just go and on the like secondary market and like specifically, he's missing his left hand.
Okay.
You know the purple piece that snapped on
Plugs in.
And I was like, no, he traveled with me for 25 years and has earned that. And that's part of what that toy is for me.
The scars, that makes sense.
The other one I have is my original Grapple.
Okay, nice.
Who's missing both, like both of his hands and or the missiles that could go in there. Yeah, I don't have any of that. I keep the Transformers characters that I had purchased since adulthood in much better condition. I just want to let everyone know I'm not a monster. I'm really not.
Are there any of the newer ones you bought that like really stand out to you as your favorite or you're very fond of?
Yeah, so I really like really interesting transformation mechanisms. There's a Generations Cup from a few years ago who I adore his transformation. There's also a Cosmos that was gifted to me by Vangelis.
Oh, okay.
Which also a brilliant transformation mechanism.
And that's the Legion, like the smaller size.
Yep. And I think that's an absolutely gorgeous transformation.
Yep.
There are a number of War for Cybertron Siege characters that are amazing looking.
That Shockwave.
And I'm really, really happy that the mini vehicles or mini have returned. They were always some of my favorite toys. So yes. What are you?
I'm pumped up for them too. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but the Generation Springer that they did, based upon the IDW design, is beautiful.
Yeah. Also, that yellow and green paint job looks really, really good, and I really like how that paint job sort of travels as you're switching from mode to mode. It still is able to have that be like the core color scheme in that series of modes. Anyway, it's a great figure.
Absolutely, and I loved Combiner Wars. As a kid, I almost completed a few Combiners, but I just never had that fifth member, so to be able to kind of complete them now is fantastic.
Well, all of the Scramble City Combiners, you could put different ones together, so I mean, you may not have been able to get a full team together, but you were able to create Combiners, right, just by mixing the...
I could have, but I am very...
You're a purist?
I'm
respect
a
that.
perfectionist. It would bug me a little bit.
I respect that.
The only one I had a complete set of was I've heard it pronounced either Seacons or Seacons. Piranacon was the only one that I did not have, or is the one I did have completed.
Okay.
And he is one of the very few that they've not updated yet, so I'm really hoping that they do him soon.
Okay. It's a cool character.
Or if we see aquatic creatures as a subtype in the future in the card game, would also be fantastic.
Noted. I'm not hiding anything. It's that I don't want to like create false hope where we're not. I know we're not doing something, or I don't want to like confirm something that I know that we are doing.
And we know you're limited in what you can share.
Noted. Yep, we'll be announcing the details about Wave 2 in early January.
That's awesome.
So some of the questions that you've asked will be answered in more detail then.
Cool. And I don't know if you can share this in any way. Is there any information where, for like a schedule of releases, people have been wondering that, roughly how many sets per year, or anything along those lines? We know especially early in a product's life cycle, it can be, things can be fluid sometimes.
I will say this. We are, I think skillfully, but negotiating the fine line between not enough waves of product, which then leaves dry spells where people are like, I'll go do something else. Or too much product where people are like, please stop.
Right.
I can't collect everything. And so we are, there is a correct line, and that's not a line that's predetermined, right? Like, we watch what's going on. So I can't answer that question fully. Even though I do have answers for
Understood.
it. But that is something that we'll be answering early in the new year.
That's awesome. And yeah, it did seem that Metroplex hit at a really good time to kind of shake things up a little.
Yeah, so that was intentional too. Like 1 month after a booster set hit, we dropped Metroplex, knowing that it was standalone, if you want it to be, but it had a few elements that could help shake up some things in the booster set. I thought that worked well for the community. I thought it worked well for us as a business. So I think that's something you'll see again in the future.
That's awesome. And just quick feedback. We found actually that the Autobot starter used the deck that's included there, and then the Metroplex starter, the deck that's included there, they felt very balanced against each other.
Specifically designed that way.
That's awesome.
Because knowing that both decks can be upgraded, for this specific one, because it came out a month after the Autobot starter set, we did do balance testing against both of them against one another.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And if there's nothing else you want to share, Drew, we can let you kind of get back to the business of.
So what I want to share and what I can share are two different things. It was super awesome. Thank you for letting me be on your show.
We appreciate
you
being here. Thank you guys, and keep buying Transformers product.
Bye, everyone.